All right, it's Thursday, February 6, 2025, and Donald Trump's peace plan for Ukraine has been leaked to the media. Like we reported for weeks now, it turns out Trump was in fact in talks with Ukraine and Russia since way before the inauguration. A date for peace is set. The end of the war, it looks like, could be on schedule. We're going to show you the details. Also, rumblings out of D.C. starting yesterday about something big coming from AG Pam Bondi. Could we be about to see the infamous Epstein client list? That's what we're hearing, and more stories as well from around the country. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates.
I think Zelensky is maybe the greatest salesman of any politician that's ever lived. Every time he comes to our country, he walks away with $60 billion. And I like him. You know, on the impeachment hoax #1, he was very good. He said, no, the president didn't threaten me at all. He could have been a grandstander and said, I was threatened, right, Matt? He could have said, I was threatened. So I like him. But he's the greatest salesman of all time. He walks in. So now here's the beauty. He just left 4 days ago with $60 billion. And he gets home and he announces that he needs another $60 billion, else it never ends. It never ends.
Major news out of Washington this morning as President Donald Trump's peace plan is leaked to the media. Under the plan, the fighting will stop by Easter, first via negotiated ceasefire, then through a second stage of a final peace deal. The plan leaked to Ukrainian news outlet Strana. It's been doing the rounds apparently for days in these diplomatic circles in Europe and Ukraine. Now, before we look at the details, because there's a lot of information, detailed planning, deadlines, dollar amounts, just realize this war has been raging for years. There's been close to $500 billion of damage, destruction caused, hundreds of thousands killed. And as much as people say you can't allow Putin to get away with this, what's your answer? Keep it going? For how long? Russia can't lose this war. Ukraine can't win this war without a NATO ground invasion, and nobody, I hope nobody thinks that's a good idea. It never should have started to begin with. This was Joe Biden and the Democrats' war. At this point, the only logical solution is to end it. The United States already sent almost $250 billion of U.S. tax money to fund this war, $177 billion or something like that, $250 billion almost. Meanwhile, we learned this week that only half of that money ever reached Ukraine. Zelensky admitting this, admitting the DC warmongers apparently are siphoning off their share. Watch.
Дивіться, я коли чую, і раніше чув, і сьогодні ми чуємо від Сполучених Штатів Америки, що Америка дала Україні сотні мільярдів, 177, якщо сказати більш точно. Така звучала точна цифра, яку підтримували або голосував Конгрес, тощо різні організації. Дивіться, я як президент воюючої країни вам говорю, ми отримали більше 75. Тобто 100 мільярдів з цих 177, або 200, говорять навіть деякі люди, ми ніколи не отримували. І це важливо. Бо ми говоримо про конкретні речі, бо ми отримали це не грошима, а зброєю. Ми зброю отримали на 70 з чимось мільярдів. Є навчання, тренування, є додатковий транспорт, є не тільки ціну на зброю, були гуманітарні програми, соціальні тощо. Але коли говорять, що Україна під час війни отримала 200 мільярдів на підтримку армії тощо, це неправда. Я не знаю, де всі ці гроші.
We are $36 trillion in debt. The last thing we need to do is be funding a war halfway around the world with a nuclear power. Trump knows that. He campaigned on ending it, and that's exactly what he's planning on doing. That's exactly what this plan outlines. Unfortunately, Russia's in the driver's seat, though. Their army's been steadily advancing for months. North Korea has even sent infantry to fight on the ground, and Ukraine is out of money. and they're out of troops, recruiting men in their 60s. So with that being said, to get Russia to the table will require some pretty big concessions. But the plan also includes continued American support for Ukraine's military and a pathway for EU membership by 2030. Not NATO membership, EU membership. The peace plan, which the White House has yet to verify, but from what I understand, these are the broad strokes of what we're looking at. The plan says an official ceasefire will start no later than April 20th. The ceasefire would include a ban on Ukraine joining NATO and demand Kyiv accept Russian sovereignty on its annexed land. The Daily Mail published all the details, saying on top of this, Ukrainian troops will be made to leave Russia's Kursk region, where it launched a counteroffensive in August, while a contingent of European soldiers, which could include British troops, would be asked to police a demilitarized zone. American troops will not be involved in this contingent. It will also include reconstruction commitments, which the EU will be reportedly asked to assist Ukraine in its reconstruction efforts, which could cost as much as $486 billion over the next decade, $500 billion. That's what these warmongers want, by the way. This is how money gets laundered. $500 billion in reconstruction. Start a war, kill hundreds of thousands of people, level cities, all in an effort for BlackRock and Vanguard to organize the financing for the reconstruction. And the money train that's been funding the infrastructure rebuilds in Ukraine ended this week after Trump and Doge shuttered U.S. aid, which for the last 3 years has been the organ of the U.S. government that was paying for critical infrastructure rebuilds, or funneling our money rather. Watch Congressman Vindman, who you probably will recognize. This was the guy who was him and his brother, his twin brother, part of the first or second Trump impeachment, the second Trump impeachment. Watch him admit this yesterday while protesting in front of USAID's headquarters, admitting this is basically one giant money laundering scheme. Watch.
If we want to zero out the budget, 1% of the budget of this country, $40 billion, we better look at double or tripling the military budget. Because without that soft power around the world, we are making ourselves weaker. We're making our adversaries and allies stronger. We step back and we create a vacuum. You know who steps in? It's Russia, it's China, it's our adversaries from around the world. So from a standpoint of national security, the work that you all are doing out here at USAID, many of you, my constituents, we have over 55,000 federal government employees in the 7th Congressional District. I thank you. I thank you for your hard work. We've got some tough times ahead, but Congress and the American people are behind you. And let me just put one concrete way that we are actually damaging our national security. Right now, every single day, Ukraine is taking the brunt of Russian attacks on infrastructure. USAID programs are actually rebuilding the infrastructure, the electricity infrastructure. If this administration wants to bring peace to Ukraine, you don't do that by eliminating the support for the infrastructure in Ukraine. You do that by applying pressure to Russia and not just to Ukraine.
The plans will reportedly begin with a phone call between Zelensky and Vladimir Putin in early February. A meeting between the two will occur in late February to early March, and an official ceasefire declaration of a ceasefire by April 20th. A declaration on the agreed parameters for ending the war would then be released by May 9th, after which Kyiv would be asked not to extend martial law or mobilize any more troops. While many of the terms of the reported plans include concessions for Ukraine, Trump is also reportedly planning on continuing American support for Ukraine's military, as well as a pathway for it to join the EU by 2030. Let me know in the comments if you think this is too many concessions on Ukraine's side, or is it what's required to get this over with? Because we're going to see Zelensky most likely reject the plan, but I doubt it's going to matter. Moscow and Washington are in the lead. What Zelensky wants probably won't matter at the end of the day. That's just the reality. In another story, Pam Bondi has been confirmed as our new Attorney General. Her first full day on the job yesterday, roiling D.C., cleaning ranks at DOJ, firing many of the Biden prosecutors that were hired over the last few years, and she launched inquiries into all of President Trump's prosecutions, looking for wrongdoing by these Biden prosecutors. And since her confirmation vote Tuesday, there have been these rumblings of something big coming. What we're hearing is a document dump of some sort, the declassification of all or most of the Epstein docs, the Epstein client list, the FBI's 302s from the raid and interviews that they were doing of people on his island in the Caribbean. Where's all that information? Why was it never released to the public? Well, we could be about to see a lot of this made public. Elon Musk just sent these rumors into overdrive after posting multiple times about this last night. Posting this video showing Pam Bondi back in 2023 talking about what the Biden DOJ should be doing with the Epstein case. Watch this.
Well, we know he was on the plane, not only on the plane a couple times, multiple times. He traveled internationally with Jeffrey Epstein. And he was on the plane called the Lolita Express because it supposedly had a bed in there where Jeffrey Epstein had young girls. He has been a friend of his, a continuing friend of his for years and years. Contrast that with Donald Trump, who hasn't spoken to him in many years, over a decade, after he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago for bad behavior. So that's the difference there. And I think Americans see the two-tier justice system. But, you know, we don't know. They're saying Clinton has not been to his private island, but he has traveled all over the world with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know why AG Garland and the Justice Department are so quiet on this tonight. You know, they're out there labeling parents domestic terrorists, yet they're saying nothing about this. And these documents were so slow to come out. Human trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar business in this country, and Jeffrey Epstein is dead, and Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison for 20 years where she belongs. And if people in that report are still fighting to keep their names private, Sean, they have no legal basis to do so unless they're a child, a victim, or a cooperating defendant by some chance against some potential case against Ghislaine Maxwell. And I think Mark Garagos, as a great criminal defense attorney, will back that up as well.
Now, it's likely we'll have to wait until Kash Patel is confirmed by the Senate, which could be next week. A lot of these documents, a lot of these records are being held by the FBI. Well, last week, during Kash Patel's confirmation hearing, he promised to provide full transparency to the American people, get the American people the ground truth on what really happened on that island, who was involved, how high all of this goes, if it's still going on, which we know it most likely is. Watch Martha Blackburn ask Kash about all this last week, get him to promise total transparency. Watch.
I want to talk to you about the Epstein case. I have worked on this for years, trying to get those records of who flew on Epstein's plane and who helped him build this international human trafficking, sex trafficking ring. Now, earlier I urged then Chairman Durbin to subpoena those records, and I ended up being blocked by Senator Durbin and Christopher Wray. They stonewalled on this. And I know that breaking up these trafficking rings is important to President Trump. So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past and how we are going to countermand missing children and exploited children going forward.
Thank you for that.
All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.